Hey everyone, hopefully you are watching this video because you are an existing life group leader who's hoping to sharpen some of your skills, or you are a life group leader in training preparing to go out and launch a group. And our heart is to come alongside you and make this process as smooth and as easy as possible, because life groups really are the lifeblood of our church. It's where relationships happen, it's where discipleship happens, and so we think that this is so important what you are doing in terms of leading a life group. So the purpose of this first video in a series of videos to help prepare you or sharpen your life group leadership is, in this video, what we're gonna do is talk through the big picture vision of what it looks like to actually lead a life group. We're gonna talk through some of the developmental stages life groups go through so that you can actually be aware of the journey. We have this tool called the journey where we kind of walk through, this is how your life group grows, this is where you might hit a wall. And so we'll start talking about that. And then at the end, we'll round out our time just clarifying what exactly is the role of a life group leader if you had to put it on a job description. So this is gonna be a lot of information, there's gonna be a lot of stuff we cover, but hopefully you will benefit from all of it. And to start into our content today, what I wanna just make clear, we know, and I'm sure you know too, that life groups are always launched with the best of intentions. Anytime you start a life group or take over an existing life group as the leader, you have a lot of optimism, you have the greatest intentions, and it's good to start out with that kind of excitement. But what can often happen is you start excited, and then sometimes you might run into a wall, or real life hits, or your group hits a problem. And so what we've found is the best way to create a life group that's actually sustainable, can sustain over the long haul, is so that when you start that group, or when you take over leading that group, you're aware of the process, you're aware of the potential obstacles. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to be kind of like a GPS. You know, when you're now the GPS on your phone, which I'm sure you use, they've gotten so good that there are times when if you're traveling, there will be traffic up ahead and it will warn you before you even get to the roadblock and send you on another route that might be faster. So that's really what we're trying to do, especially with this first video. So with that in mind, let's talk about vision, let's talk about the journey, and then let's talk about the role of life group leaders. So vision is just this, it's this word that's used in church a lot, but essentially vision is a preferred destination of where you want to go. It's a picture of where you want to go. And as a church, we have a very clear vision that we try to tie our life groups into moving towards, and that vision is we exist as a church to see ordinary people and families find extraordinary life in Jesus together. So what we want to do is put people in groups who can go after Jesus together, and then they start to experience this extraordinary life that we talk about. But from a life group leader standpoint, that sounds really good, but to actually accomplish that vision, there's got to be some things that you do. There's got to be some things that you aim at. So as a life group leader, there's 3 words that you live and die by. These are 3 aims that we want every life group, no matter your age, your stage, your curriculum you use, no matter what, we want every life group to aim at 3 things, and this is our vision. This is what we're aiming at as a life group. The first thing is gospel-centeredness. Gospel-centeredness is the ability to think like Jesus. The second thing we want you to aim at is community. Community is to share life, bear burdens, and break bread together. And then the third thing we want you to aim at as a life group is mission. We want you to learn to live life on mission and serve to share people, serve in order to share the gospel with other people. So those are gonna be some items that we talk about in separate videos, but we wanna make sure that you know that is the thing that you're aiming at. That is your bread and butter as a life group leader: gospel, community, and mission. In fact, the reason we give you those 3 things is because we want you to organize your curriculum, your calendar, and all your activities around those 3 things. Because there's gonna be one of those 3 things that you probably lean towards doing most naturally within your personality. And so you'll need other people around you to help actually balance your life group so that you're not just only about thinking and education. You're not only about doing community together. You're not only about mission, but we're about all 3 of those things. And so the natural question that you might wonder is, why do we need something to aim at? If a group of believers get together and they have good hearts and they are seeking Jesus together, why do we need some of this structure? Why do we need something to aim at? And the most basic explanation I could give to you is that if you don't aim at something, eventually you'll find yourself going through the motions. So Proverbs 29:18, it says it this way, you've heard this before. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law. So the idea there is without giving clear direction to your group, it might start really exciting, it might start really fun, really adventurous, but eventually you might find yourself getting kind of complacent, you might find yourself going through the motions, and then eventually your group might feel like it's drifting. And what we found is that every single problem a life group runs into is rooted back in one cause. And that one cause that every problem flows from is the idea of something called vision leak. Vision leak is when you forget the purpose why you're meeting in the first place. It's kind of like in school when a kid says, when will we ever use this in the real world? And then they lack motivation to actually learn that topic. Well, in your life group, if you forget that as a group of people, you're trying to aim at those three things and you just are meeting week in and week out, going through the motions, eventually you'll feel kind of some stagnation, you'll feel complacency, and then you'll hit a wall, so to speak, and then it'll get more difficult. So that's why we talk about aiming at those three things: gospel, community, and mission. And so let me kind of transition. I will say we have a tool that I'm sure you have by now if you're in training or an existing leader called a vision guide, where actually we give you a tool that you can walk your group through these things I'm talking about right now. You can walk through these things with your group. And so we're not expecting you to memorize everything I'm saying in this video, because we have a tool that you can go through with your group together. And in this vision guide, we have a tool called the journey within it. So the journey is just our effort to show you the developmental stages of your life group and how it could grow and some walls you might hit. And so for the sake of time, because we want to keep these videos relatively short, I'm not going to walk through every single stage of the journey. There's just really one important thing that I want to mention that is often not talked about when it comes to life group ministry. And that is, there will come a time, no matter what, when you're leading a life group and as a group you hit something that we call the wall. So the wall is basically this, some sort of, it looks different depending on your group, but it's usually a relational issue within the group, or it's usually like you feel like you're going through the motions as a group, like there's not as much passion as there once was. Maybe there's key people who were once a part of your group who are no longer there. And so eventually every single group hits this wall, and we hit walls in life. You know, you hit these plateaus in life where you just feel like you're kind of stuck, and your life group will hit these walls. But here's the key that we want to mention, and this is something we can't spend too much time on right now, but walls that you hit are very normal. And the key as a life group leader is when you hit a wall is don't try to avoid it, don't quit, don't let your group fold, but actually try to face the harsh reality that the wall is exposing and you work through the wall. And the way that you do that is myself, I love to coach life group leaders through these types of things. We have life group coaches who would be glad to come alongside you and help you work through whatever wall you're facing. But we just want to make that clear on the front end, is that it's okay to hit a wall. It's normal. That's just part of life. And if you're not expecting it, it'll hit you harder. But if you are expecting it, you'll probably have more likelihood to make it through the other side stronger. So we've talked about vision, gospel, community, and mission. We've talked about the journey and the idea that you're going to hit a wall, and that's okay. We want sustainable life groups, so we've got to be able to face reality as it is in front of us. But now how I want to end our video is by just giving you the brass tacks of what does it mean to be a life group leader. What is the job description? And I'm gonna fly through these things, but it will at least give you a picture of what your job is if you're leading a life group. So again, we're going back to 3 words. So 3 words that describe what a life group leader does. You are a facilitator, you are a delegator, and you are a multiplier. A facilitator, a delegator, and a multiplier. So let me explain what these are without belaboring the points. But being a facilitator as a life group leader means that you facilitate the environment of the group. It means you facilitate the discussion that you have as a group. Most of our groups are going to be discussion based. There's going to be some discussion. And so as a leader, you are the one who actually helps craft the questions and facilitate the discussion. You know, what's really important to know is as a life group leader, you don't have to be a teacher type. Some are teacher types, but sometimes if you're a life group leader and you're kind of more of the teacher type, you might be the person who talks too much and monopolizes the conversation. Really, the best life group leaders are really good facilitators. They're really good at asking questions. And so that's really the first thing that is your role as a life group leader, is get good at asking questions, diving deeper, and making sure you're trying to include everybody in the discussion. Another thing that is involved in facilitation is, as a leader, this seems counterintuitive, but you need to be the one who leads the way in being vulnerable within your group. So if you are confessing sin to your group, if you're sharing your own struggles, other people will follow suit. If you act like your life is perfect and everything is all together, then actually that might prevent people from feeling open enough to share about their own struggles. So if you want to create an environment of vulnerability, you as a leader have to be the one who actually shares, hey, I don't have a perfect life. Here's some ways that I struggle. Here's some things that I need prayer for. That actually, counterintuitively, that will help increase the health of your group. So first, you're a facilitator. Second, as a life group leader, you are a delegator. Hopefully this is good news to you. What this means is, if you are a life group leader who is a delegator, that means you don't bear the burden of leadership yourself. That means that you actually delegate responsibilities to other people within your group to help carry the load so that you can actually accomplish the aims of gospel, community, and mission. So what we've done is, in the Vision Guide, we've actually laid out some specific roles that you can delegate to other people who prove themselves to be faithful, available, and teachable. Now, you don't want to put anybody in these roles. There's going to be another video that we record that tells you how to recruit, and we're going to dive deeper into what these different roles are that you can delegate out. But suffice it to say, healthy life groups share their leadership. We love to launch life groups with co-leaders, where you lead and you have a co-leader who helps carry the load. We love to see life groups have what we call a life sharing coordinator, somebody who organizes the fun activities. And we love it when life group leaders have, or life groups have, what's called a missions coordinator, who actually helps identify areas in our community who need service, and then you rally the troops to go and serve in that area and share the gospel. So you're a delegator. That's what you do. You delegate responsibility. The third thing you do as a life group leader, and the final thing that is the part of the job description, so to speak, is, as a life group leader, you are a multiplier. You're a multiplier. Now, multiplication is a very scary word for life group leaders oftentimes, because what we think is that means we start a group and then immediately we just split the group up and send some people out. But that's really not what we're after. The idea of multiplication is that because you are a group leader who shares leadership, then you have leaders who rise up from within the group. And then as people grow, we want to place them in positions to use their gifts to the best of their abilities. And so what happens is people start taking on leadership within the group, and then they start growing so much that the best thing to do with them would be to send them out to start another group. So as a life group leader, you are keeping your pulse on that reality, and you're trying to look for people who could potentially lead other life groups. And we're going to explain this in another video in more detail, but the best and most healthy way to multiply a life group is for a leader to be raised up, and then they are sent out with maybe 1 or 2 couples, if it's a couples group, 1 to 4 people from within the group. So it's never healthy to actually split your group right in half, and half go with you and half go with the new leader. Usually that doesn't end up well. But if you treat it kind of like church planting, and you create a small launch team from within your existing life group, if you have 12 people in your group, leaders raised up, and then you send 4 people with them, that's a great core team to launch that group. So you're a multiplier. You're always looking for opportunities to multiply, and you got to talk about it often within your group, or the members are going to get scared of it. So that's really the big picture vision of what we aim at as life group leaders, and what our job description is. And to close out our time for this video, I want to make something very, very clear. This is a lot of information. It can be very overwhelming. The results and success of a life group does not solely rest on your shoulders. We are people who believe firmly that God has to be the one who puts his stamp of approval. The old proverb says that we prepare the horses for battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. So you do everything you can to prepare, but we trust the results of our preparation up to God. So there might be other obstacles you run into. There might be other joys that you run into that you weren't expecting. But ultimately, the victory belongs to God, and he loves you completely apart from your success as a life group leader. So we gotta be much more acquainted with God's love for us than we are with the idea that we just are in love with the fact that we get to have a leadership position in the church, so to speak. We lead out of an understanding of God's love for us, and that's when we are most healthy. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video on vision, the journey, and the role of a life group leader.